Welcome, everybody. I want to go into some details on the growing concern that the US will see back-to-back systems creating a large-scale severe weather outbreaks, one over the weekend and then one in the middle of next week. So let's dive into those details. First, let's just take a look at the current conditions in the lower 48. We've had some severe weather today in Texas and Louisiana. There's been several tornado warnings today, and I believe a couple confirmed tornadoes, as well as a lot of flooding. There's been a large complex of thunderstorms working across especially south and eastern Texas. Some of that is remaining here in Louisiana this evening, and that will work its way along the central Gulf Coast. The models show that kind of breaking down as it continues to move east, but nonetheless, there could be still some lingering heavier thunderstorms and definitely some heavier rain chances, especially southern Arkansas, Louisiana, and into Mississippi and even into Alabama by Saturday morning. We've also had some severe weather across the northern part of the country. Severe storms dropped some larger hail in Minnesota and Wisconsin this afternoon and evening. Those seem to be winding down. There's a few storms with some gusty winds, maybe some small hail in those, but it looks like the severe threat is definitely waning as we get past dark. Here on Friday, March 28th, 2025, we even had a severe thunderstorm around Duluth, Minnesota earlier this afternoon, producing hail, sleet, and freezing rain as the temperatures are right around freezing in that area around Duluth and northern Wisconsin this afternoon. So some very unique weather in the northern Great Lakes. Tomorrow is where things get interesting, and it's going to be fairly quiet through most of the afternoon. There's generally a cap in place here in the central US tomorrow. Storms are not going to be breaking out early in the afternoon. It's actually going to take quite a little bit of time until the atmosphere starts to cool, likely after dark, until those storms fire in Oklahoma and Kansas. That'll propagate east into Missouri as the evening continues, especially late Saturday and even overnight, early Sunday morning, the overnight hours of Sunday morning. Primary hazard is going to be large hail. There is a chance of tornadoes, especially just after the initiation of these storms. That's when the environment looks like it'll come together the best for any tornadic production. A little larger area for some damaging winds, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Storm Prediction Center ups this a little bit, kind of in that same area that we just saw the tornado risk for tomorrow, in that area from northern and eastern Oklahoma through eastern Kansas and into western Missouri. And certainly I think the biggest risk, like I mentioned, is the hail. And we do have a hatched area for hail, especially in that area again, from northern Oklahoma into eastern Kansas. And I think the largest hail is going to be after that initiation as well. That's when the storms are going to be a little bit more discrete. Before, it looks like some of the models are indicating that they're going to form into a bit of a cluster and a line of storms. And we'll take a look at the models here in detail in just a minute. And this is taking a look at the risk for severe weather on Sunday. This would be March 30th, 2025. And as you can see, earlier this week we had a day 6 and day 5 risk that the Storm Prediction Center put out, and it was one of the largest risk areas for a day 5, day 6 risk. And that large area of severe weather risk has really stayed true. We have a light risk all the way from the thumb of Michigan all the way down to areas north of Houston and I-10 in Louisiana. We also have a very large enhanced risk right now by the Storm Prediction Center. That includes much of Arkansas, northern Mississippi, northwest Alabama, and then western Tennessee, western Kentucky, all the way up through areas, most of Indiana as well, up to about that I-80 corridor in Indiana, and then also southwestern Ohio. We have a pretty large risk area, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get an upgrade as we get closer to Sunday. And we'll take a look at the models here, but especially I think this area in northern Arkansas, western Tennessee, up through the lower Ohio Valley, I think that's your higher area of risk. So we'll see if that does pan out. But either way, anywhere in this area, all the way again from Michigan, all the way down to areas here along I-10, need to be ready for severe weather. And it looks like there is going to be an all hazards threat for Sunday. So damaging winds, large hail, and long track tornadoes are certainly possible. A risk area this large, I think we're going to get a potpourri of severe weather. So likely we'll see all hazards, at least somewhere in this expansive risk area. And going along with that, you can see there is a hatched risk that the Storm Prediction Center has put out, it really covers that area that's currently the enhanced area. That's just an indication that the Storm Prediction Center is pretty confident that that area is going to see some significant severe weather. Be weather aware if you're outside, have any activities, and definitely have multiple ways to get warnings on Sunday. And then as the cold front pushes east, that all shifts to the East Coast by Monday, and we can see severe weather is possible up along the Massachusetts-New Hampshire border, all the way down to areas here in south central Louisiana, including northern Florida. I think right now, primarily it's going to be a damaging wind threat, similar to some of the events that we've seen so far this spring with severe weather season picking up on the East Coast. So yeah, likely damaging winds, although there is probably going to be some tornadic potential, especially here in the southeast. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a little bit of enhanced tornadic potential in Virginia and the Carolinas, maybe down into Georgia. Just a little bit more instability and moisture still looks like it's going to be hanging around, although a lot of the energy is going to be zipping off into Canada and the Maritimes. It's a little bit displaced from the energy that's moving off rapidly to the north and east. But again, all hazards are technically, I think, going to be in play for Monday as well. And we're not done there. The Storm Prediction Center has issued another Day 6 risk, and it's another expansive risk all the way from southern Michigan back down to areas near Dallas, Fort Worth, and areas north of Houston, Texas. So again, very similar kind of risk area. Could be under the gun for more all hazards severe weather. This is for Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. Again, we're going to get more details as we get closer to this event, but already the Storm Prediction Center is seeing a lot of the indications that I've seen that we're going to have another potent system ejecting from the Rockies and kind of traveling in a path like this with a low pressure system. Out ahead of that low pressure system, we're going to have another chance of severe weather. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets shifted a little bit even further north. So some of the models are showing this track takes a little bit further north track, and that would put maybe areas into southern Wisconsin, a little bit more Michigan also in play. But I do think that trailing cold front is going to develop some severe weather all the way down into that Red River Valley and eventually transitioning over into the mid-south. We'll get more details as we get into next week, but it's significant enough that it's worthy of the Storm Prediction Center putting out this Day 6 risk and also just highlighting it a little bit here this evening. Let's dive into the models a little bit and take a look at the upcoming weekend's severe weather event and a little bit of the dynamics behind it here. So first, I just want to take a look at that 500 millibar height. Some of your jet stream winds that are really factoring in at about that 18,000, 20,000 foot mark. These are really pretty important in developing that severe weather, and it really helps those storms ventilate. So putting this into motion, into about 20Z, it's going to be ejecting into the plains just as that cap is starting to break down, and that's what's going to really help these storms mature very quickly. We're going to see, I think, a pretty quick explosion of storms of really nothing on the radar, and then all of a sudden severe storms. And then as we get into Sunday, you can see a deepening trough here, and a deepening piece of energy will eject out Sunday, actually a couple of them. One in the morning on Sunday, just as the sun is really coming up, starting to get some heating, we'll see that first piece of energy. And then by afternoon, and especially into the evening, we'll see that second piece of energy eject out as that trough deepens over the plains. And that's what's really going to ramp up that severe weather activity. This is about 20Z on Sunday. That's what's really going to ramp up that activity in the mid-Mississippi Valley and into the Ohio valleys Sunday evening. And we can even see here that jet even picks up a little bit further late on Sunday, right over that area around the Mississippi River from Missouri into Illinois. And that's why the Storm Prediction Center has that risk area that goes up pretty far into Michigan. Piece of energy is definitely coming into this area, and there's going to be enough warm, moist, unstable air to really continue that storm production into the Ohio Valley and even into the southern Great Lakes on Sunday evening. So taking a look at some of the ingredients coming together to create this severe weather event this weekend, we start the weekend with a really big ridge. It really dominated much of the country this week, especially the last couple days. We have had a little bit of a wave come through and undercut that ridge in Texas and now into Louisiana. That's why the flooding and some scattered severe weather was present the last couple days in South Texas and now through the Gulf Coast here into Louisiana today. And it's allowed a lot of moisture to stream up, especially through the Mississippi Valley. Even though it doesn't look to be the deepest low pressure system that we've seen, it has enough ample moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. It has a really wide warm sector. And you can see there is a lot of moisture still out ahead of this. We can see that moisture streaming up through Texas and the Arklatex into the high plains even. And that's why we've had some severe weather even up here along kind of the boundary between the Gulf moisture and some of those cooler temperatures in Minnesota and Wisconsin this evening. And you can see it starting to set up here even into Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. So again, really the eastern 2/3 of the country is going to have this warm, moist environment for this system to clash with that cold and drier air of the west. This also, and I'll take a look at this in just a minute as well, but this moisture bumping up on the northern end against those colder temperatures is really creating what could be a very damaging ice storm for areas across northern Minnesota, the UP of Michigan, and then into the northeast. Let's take a look at the significant tornado parameters. It really becomes pretty hot around 3Z, about 10 p.m. Central Time. And you can see it's going to be arriving just around that same time that some of the upper air features arrive, ejecting from the Rockies. And then also we already have the dew points. You can see there's a little bit of nose of that significant tornado parameter, especially up into Oklahoma, central and northern Oklahoma, and edging up into eastern Kansas, maybe into northwest Missouri. Give the storms just a little extra energy here to maybe produce a tornado just after that initiation of those storms. As I put it back into motion, you'll see that dies down where the storms fired initially in Kansas and Oklahoma, but it remains overnight a pretty good significant tornado parameter in eastern Oklahoma and into Arkansas. And as we go into Sunday, this is by Sunday afternoon, those tornado parameters expand all the way again from the Red River and eastern Texas. And now you can see here pushing even into southern Michigan. So we have a pretty good wide area of significant tornado parameters. And that really continues to develop late on Sunday. And then going into Monday, this is Monday afternoon now, you can see those significant tornado parameters still exist on the Gulf Coast around Mobile, southern Alabama up towards Montgomery, and then also in the Piedmont. Now that we're close enough to the event, here's a look at the HRRR, and we'll watch these storms fire as we get into late Saturday. There are going to be some scattered showers and storms working their way actually northeast through the Mississippi Valley on Saturday. Most of that should not be severe, maybe an isolated stronger to severe storm, but this is 0Z. We really don't see much. And then here we just start at 1Z, start to see a little bit of the development of storms. And then very quickly by 3Z, they're growing and upscaling into severe thunderstorms here in Oklahoma, Kansas, maybe into western Missouri, northwest Missouri. And those are going to continue to roll through the night, and eventually the models kind of indicate it congeals into a bit of a bow echo with likely damaging wind threats. The models do kind of show it breaking down, so we're going to have to see. This is one of the points of contention here as we continue to put the model into motion. The atmosphere resets very quickly, and we can see new development here. This is by 16Z. We can really start to see those storms develop and quickly upscale. And again here by 18Z on Sunday, we could have very mature supercell thunderstorms working their way across Missouri, northern Arkansas, and into Illinois. And that's really only the start of the event on Sunday. As we get into 00Z, about 7 o'clock Central Time, we have severe thunderstorms all the way down into eastern Texas, across Arkansas, across southern Missouri, and into Illinois. And we'll see how that looks here in the Ohio Valley next. You can see those storms working their way across eastern Kansas and Missouri. This is now overnight through the early morning hours on Sunday. And we can again see here those storms kind of dissipate as they get into Illinois And now we'll look into those new developing storms in Missouri and Arkansas, and how quickly those upscale even by the afternoon on Sunday. With more storms developing up here in northern Indiana and even into southern Michigan, the storms really just unzip here in the warm sector. If the HRRR run here is accurate, we could have damaging winds and embedded tornadoes in this northern mode in Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan. Pretty concerning here. We can see the cells are remaining a little more discrete down here in southern Missouri and Arkansas. So that may increase that tornado threat, especially here near the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers. And again, as the night continues into areas of western Kentucky, western Tennessee, northern Mississippi, and even into northern Alabama. And that's as far out as the HRRR goes at this point. But again, we can see a pretty expansive area of severe weather, clusters of storms that could be producing all hazards. And then I really want to take a look at the winter side of things of this storm. And you can see here, putting it into motion, the ice accumulation building up across that northern tier of Minnesota, Wisconsin, especially the UP of Michigan and the northern lower peninsula of Michigan, across southern Ontario, as well as into areas here in upstate New York, areas in New Hampshire and Vermont. Looks like the worst of it is going to stay out of the big cities north of Boston. But areas here in southern Maine are also going to get into some of the heavier ice. That same area is going to see a chance at snow, and I'll put this into motion. Now, this product could be enhancing some of those snowfall totals. Some of that is going to be ice precip. But again, some of this area could see some significant snow as well across that northern tier of the US. New England's going to be pretty interesting because we have a pretty sharp cutoff between the winter precip and then severe weather. Severe weather could definitely be a potential here on Monday up and down the East Coast from areas around Boston, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, all the way down again into areas here in southern Alabama. That's going to wrap things up for this update. Be sure to like and subscribe and click that bell icon so you get the notifications, because we're going to be busy here this weekend and into April here on WeatherCast America, bringing you live severe weather coverage of these severe weather outbreaks, as well as continued weather updates for your part of the country. So take it easy, be safe, be weather aware, especially this weekend, Saturday, late Saturday in the Central Plains, and then a lot of the country from the Gulf Coast up through the Great Lakes on Sunday, and then that pushes to the East Coast on Monday, and then we'll reset for another round of severe weather by the middle of next week, and probably again looking out a few days later, next weekend could be another rough one.